So anyway, let's now talk about you and your Common Purpose campaign, Brian. What's the crux of your argument about this charity, and why all the suspicion around them?
Well, it's very easy. From the time that I first became aware of Common Purpose, which is now going back, I'll say, to about 2001, roughly that sort of period of time, I became interested in what this charity was doing, because it says that it's out there to bring people together and to help them become leaders. And I became curious as to what they were doing, since nobody heard about them in their city or community. And the more that I looked into the organisation, and from very early on I had other people who were interested themselves, so they were working with me, we found that what Common Purpose said it was doing and what it appeared to be doing from the evidence in front of us were two different things.
Now, I did invite Common Purpose, who have their regional office here in Bristol up at Lee Court, just off the Portishead Road, to either pre-record a piece or to come along to debate live with Brian, but without knowing the points that Brian would make about them beforehand, they declined to do so. Instead, they emailed me a statement this afternoon, and here it is. This is a statement for the broadcast from Common Purpose, Joanne Howard. Common Purpose is a not-for-profit organisation that helps people from all walks of life develop their leadership skills and abilities. We work with people from the private, public and voluntary sector to help them learn how different leaders tackle decision-making in different ways. For example, a director from the British Red Cross responsible for leading staff and volunteers to provide emergency help after a major food or flood or fire came in one of our courses. She's now responsible for the South East region, and she wanted to learn more about how the capital works. So she met and talked to other Common Purpose participants from the police force, the local council, community leaders and business. She said this helped her enormously in understanding how all the different bodies responsible for running a region work together and how they tackle problems. In turn, she said the knowledge and inspiration she got from the course helped her grow in confidence and become a better leader. This is what Common Purpose does. We believe that society functions better when people work together, not alone, and understand and appreciate other people's perspectives and the challenges they face. Last year, over 3,000 people took part in Common Purpose courses, and we produced 600 free places for those who couldn't afford to pay to attend. Now, that actually does sound, Brian, as if it's a perfectly legitimate organisation, and I can't really understand why you would have any problem with that.
Well, the key thing about Common Purpose is it does sound wonderful, and that is a typical statement from them, because it reads okay, but if you start to look at it and say, well, you're developing leadership skills and abilities, what does that really mean? There is no meat on the bones. They don't put any detail down as to what they are really doing with groups of people.
But surely it's not wrong to be trying to help possible future leaders. If you think someone wants to actually be a good leader in the future, they're already maybe working their way up through a particular profession, shouldn't it be perfectly legitimate for a charity to be helping them acquire the skills to be a good leader?
If that were the case, I would agree with you. But what makes Common Purpose so interesting is it talks about being a not-for-profit organisation. If you look at where the money comes from to put people through Common Purpose training, overwhelmingly the money comes straight out of the public purse. And you will find that courses, which can range from anything from £3,500 plus VAT up to originally the top courses were about £9,500 plus VAT. That money overwhelmingly comes out of the public purse, and it's coming through the NHS, or it's coming through police services, or it's coming out of the budgets of schools.
But as Common Purpose have just pointed out in that statement, that they're saying that they have 600 out of the 3,000 courses are actually free for people who can't afford to pay.
Well, they do give bursaries, but we can show from letters and correspondence, and this is something I'm going to keep stressing. It's a radio programme, so I can't show documents, but everything that we have done in research in Common Purpose has been based on documents, and we have hundreds of them. And we can show you that the aim of Common Purpose in any particular area is to draw in potential graduates that can be trained. They have They have a quota which has to be filled in any particular area. They will always try and get the maximum possible sum per person on the course. However, if they have got a course where they are perhaps 80% capacity with people paying the full amount from the public sector, then they will occasionally be prepared to let people go through on what they call a bursary. So you can have the iniquitous position that somebody from the police has paid full price of £3,500 plus VAT, and that's from the taxpayer. And meanwhile, somebody else sits there doing exactly the same course, and it's costing them £90. So what Common Purpose is saying does not quite match the truth of what they're doing.
So what's the problem with these people doing these courses? I mean, I don't see any reason why someone shouldn't go along to do a course to just learn about how to better communicate in the public sector.
Well, of course, it isn't just about that, and this is where we start to get interested in Common Purpose, because what Common Purpose is doing is setting up networks of trained Common Purpose people. And we can show with documents, with emails, that the Common Purpose leaders then act, in Common Purpose's words, outside their authority, outside their own organisational authority. They communicate and link with other Common Purpose graduates in other organisations or business. In effect, it's a network, and Common Purpose describes it as a network, but that network is not declared to the general public, and so it is operating for the benefit of Common Purpose and the benefit of the graduates, but the organisation and the general public, who've overwhelmingly paid for the training, are not even aware that these graduates are talking to each other.
But isn't that just something rather like, say, for example, a society of ex-people that used to attend a particular school, something like that, where they're brought together by Common Purpose, but that doesn't mean to say that there's another hidden agenda. They have met each other through that organisation, and surely they should have the right of free association.
Well, let's be specific. If you are in the public sector and you happen to be a Freemason, you are obliged to declare the fact that you are a Freemason. And the reason that was done was in order to make decision-making processes open and accountable. You couldn't reach a deal with some of your Freemason colleagues which was actually unseen within the public decision-making process. But Common Purpose does exactly that. It brings people together who are involved in policy making, and they meet in secret under the Chatham House rules. Now, the Chatham House rules, for listeners, say that when you have a group of people meeting, the people present are not discussed or revealed to the public. Topics can be repeated elsewhere, but who said a particular subject can't be repeated. And minutes are not kept to the meeting. So you can have, for example, in a city, and indeed these meetings are happening all over the country in cities, where a group of Common Purpose people meet and they decide on policy, which could be to do with something with regard to smoking, or it could be to do with expenditure in an education budget. And the general public, who's paid for them to train in the first place, have no idea they're meeting and has no idea of what subjects they're discussing.
Yeah,
it's
but
secret.
hang on a minute, because I meet my friends down the pub. I don't keep minutes of my meetings when I'm with my friends down the pub.
But you're not paid from the public purse in order to meet your friends, which is exactly what Common Purpose is doing. And we're not talking small sums of money, because the documentary evidence shows very clearly that if we take police forces as one example around the country, if I take Devon and Cornwall Police as an example, a little while ago they'd spent over £57,000 on Common Purpose training. Now, that is a lot of money if it's multiplied by 43 police officers, police authorities across the country. If I take the Ministry of Defence, statistics on expenditure which were produced by one of the MPs who asked questions, Philip Davis, was that they'd spent about £400,000. So these are huge amounts of money, particularly when police forces, for example, are constantly claiming that they don't have money to police the streets. They are then spending these huge sums of money on a so-called not-for-profit organisation which holds meetings in secret.